We were overdue for a little internet wackiness, and you were looking a little malnourished, so allow me to feed you some vitamin D. Drama. If I asked you to tell me the most iconic YouTube video you can think of, I imagine a lot of you would default to some of the timeless classics like Numa Numa, maybe Harlem Shake. But I do think there's a not small number of people that will immediately go to something a little more recent. The now infamous Colleen Ballinger ukulele apology video. Now I know what you're thinking. Charles Dagnabbit, that was 2 months ago. That's ancient history. That milk has spoiled. Why are we talking about it now? Well, it's because JoJo Siwa just came out to defend her against everything that's happened and calls it a lie.
Speaking of friends, are you and if I'm wrong, are you friends with Colleen Ballinger still?
Yeah,
What do you say about
I've
that?
I've known Colleen for since I was 12.
Now, I recognize on the internet things move faster than me on a basketball court. It's always going a million miles per hour, so there's a good chance a lot of you forgot why Colleen Ballinger even got in trouble in the first place. So I'll give you a brief refresher. Colleen Ballinger is the woman behind the Miranda Sings brand, and recently, 2 months ago, it came to light that she had a history of talking and acting inappropriately with underage fans, even sending some extremely disturbing and inappropriate videos to children in her audience, and a lot of other very awful allegations and accusations against her and the way she acts around children. So for JoJo Siwa to come on here and immediately start by saying that she's known Colleen since she was 12, that to me is just another big red flag. Like, this is the worst possible way of starting your defense of someone if you're trying to prove they're innocent and everything was a lie. She just openly admits that when she was 12 years old, she was friends with an adult woman. When JoJo Siwa was 12, Colleen would have still been an adult. That is very weird. The creep sirens should be blaring. An adult influencer befriending children in their audience is not normal, healthy, or a good thing. Especially because Colleen, as she herself admits, had no boundaries, so would share everything with these children that she considered friends, such as sexual shit. It was very, very not good. And here's JoJo just confirming that, hey, I was one of those 12-year-olds that was friends with this adult woman.
I would imagine if you're friends with her, you kind of met her when you were young.
I was 12 when I met her.
And
she's always been nothing but kind to me. Her family, nothing but kind to me. The internet can take a lie and run so far with it, so far that it's to the point where you just can't do anything about it.
What lie? Can you point it out and set the record straight? What fib has Hulkmania run wild with? Because in this statement, in this exact same sentence here, you just confirmed one of the big accusations about the adult woman, Colleen Ballinger, befriending children. And there's a bunch of videos and messages that have all come out with things she would send to these children, and it's not good. Are those the lies? Is that all fake? Just deep fakes and all of the messages and victims aren't real? They're paid actors pretending? I would love to know what it is here. Now, full disclosure, I'm not super familiar with JoJo Siwa. It's a name I've heard a lot. I know she's a huge child celebrity. So if I may pose a thought experiment here, do you think it's possible that Colleen Ballinger was extremely nice to you and her family extremely nice to you, JoJo, because you were already a celebrity? So she knew if she was creepy and weird and saying sexual things to you, that could be a big deal because you had an audience and a platform that could call to light these awful actions. So perhaps she gave you special treatment because if she did do all of the degenerate shit she was doing with the other children she befriended, there was a chance that you could cause a lot of problems for her by revealing it publicly. But I could be totally off my rocker here, lost my marbles. At the end of the day, it's just a theory, a game theory. Just something to marinate up here in the old noodle to think on. But regardless, an adult influencer befriending a child fan is weird. Full stop. That is still just a weird thing to do.
And I've had that happen to me. And I I know Colleen very, very, very well. And I think the work that Colleen has done for the internet is incredible. I think her creativity is incredible. Miranda Sings is a character, is a comedian.
Comedian is a word we're using very loosey-goosey here, but even still, there's not exactly anything side-splitting, gut-busting hilarious about an adult sending sexual videos and messages to kids in a group chat. That's not exactly a top 10 ha-ha laughs moment. That's just fucking gross. So you can't really just excuse it at all as like, she's playing a character, just being a comedian. It doesn't really work here. And once again, you should not know Colleen Ballinger very, very well. You were a child. You were 12 years old. You should not know intricate details about this adult influencer's life who is a stranger to you. You're not like related or anything. You shouldn't have been friends to begin with. That in and of itself, I believe, is a problem.
And I think that it's very hard to be a character where people are also looking at you as you're a real human behind that character. And I think being a comedian is very hard because you were able to do things years ago that were okay, and now that we've grown and we've matured, we've realized that they're not okay. You know what I mean?
Like, in and of itself, that statement's not entirely wrong. Of course, things were different, like, 15 years ago on the internet. Like, some of the videos then have not aged well and would be very differently in terms of their perception today. But I don't recall there ever being a time in the internet's history where it was looked at in a positive light with an adult sending sexual shit to children. That's never really been something that's been written off as just comedy. So, this is kind of a nothing statement here, and by no means does this defend her at all or prove her innocence. You said that the internet ran with a lie, but now, instead of trying to prove that it's a lie, you're just saying, things were different a while ago, and now that we've matured, things aren't okay like that anymore. It's like, well, what the fuck are you actually even trying to say with this? I don't think JoJo herself knows. She just doesn't want to accept that someone that she was close with was actually just not a good person, I think.
But you, as somebody who's been in the public eye for a long time,
Yes.
do you think that it is appropriate to communicate openly with everybody that reaches out to you?
No, I don't think that communicating with fans is, you got to be careful to not
And that's what I'm saying,
to
like,
not blur a friend-fan line. It's very tough.
Howie seems to get it, and it doesn't seem like he wants to ruffle any feathers here, so he's being as light with this as possible, tiptoeing around it a bit. But he recognizes that perhaps we should be calling attention to the obvious elephant in the room, that adults in a position like Colleen Ballinger was probably shouldn't be openly communicating with child fans like this. And I also want to point out that Howie Mandel, anytime I think about him in the modern age, I immediately just think back to that TikTok video he posted like a year ago, where he had a picture of this dude whose entire asshole fell out of his anus, and Howie was in the corner with a selfie saying, "Hey guys, this just happened to my buddy Eric. Do any of you know if this is COVID related? Is this a symptom? Let me know in the comments." Dude just dropped a fresh 2022 Goatsy, a brand new prolapse out of nowhere, and it had me giggling. So anytime I see him, I immediately just, in my mind's eye, picture that picture with Howie's face next to it. I don't know if that's how his show is, like if he has that kind of content on his show. I imagine not, because I don't think JoJo Siwa would agree to be on like an explicit show like that, since she is a like child star and makes exclusively family-friendly content, I believe. So I don't think that's how his show goes, but I just want to point out, like, if it is, what a crazy collaboration for JoJo Siwa to go on that kind of show. That'd be like fucking Hellraiser collabing with Fortnite for a skin.
And I'm just saying this as a parent again. You said you started communicating with her when you were 12.
Yes.
You want to be a
But you
parent?
guys were in the same industry.
So we were
too.
in the
like,
same-
You guys were making videos and stuff together.
So
right?
we actually met.
I'm just going to summarize the story JoJo tells here. It's about how her and Colleen Ballinger met. Basically, when Dance Moms was airing, which JoJo was a star of, I suppose, they didn't get invited to a party. Colleen Ballinger caught wind of it, saw that they were upset that they weren't invited, tried to make it up to them, and they all got dinner.
Colleen was telling me that night about YouTube and how her whole family did it and how it was awesome and she vlogs her life. And that night is when I went home and I made my YouTube channel and decided that that was going to be my career, essentially. And
That's a wonderful, sweet, appropriate story.
yes.
I think Howie's right. This story isn't alarming. They got dinner. It wasn't just Colleen and JoJo, it was others as well. And Colleen was talking about YouTube as a platform and ended up inspiring JoJo Siwa to start her own YouTube channel. That's not concerning. What is concerning is staying in constant communication with this adult that allegedly had no boundaries with the children that she would frequently communicate with. That's not normal, and that's not okay.
How is it for you now being her friend and reading some of what we read? Do you think it's all a lie? Do you think it's like, have you talked to her?
There have been a lot of people on the internet who have gotten hit with this cancellation. And a lot of them I know, some of them I don't know.
Only like 3 minutes ago, you did point blank say, lie. You did drop the hard L on that one. You did say lie. But now you're kind of backpedaling it a little bit here, so it's not as aggressive. She's now going through the cancel culture spiel, and the way she talks about it makes it sound like it's some type of infection, like a virus. We've seen this type of cancellation a million times in the lab. It's a particularly insidious one, unfortunate for Colleen Ballinger. It's just a very odd thing for JoJo to say, because it feels like she's almost blaming the people that came forward with all of this evidence about years and years of inappropriate behavior.
And I look at it and I see that this is a sensitive subject. Somebody who is affected by any sort of anything having to do with adults, and I mean, for real grooming it's a very sensitive thing.
You must have really young people reaching out to you now.
Howie threw her a life raft right there. He put the water wingies on her because she was drowning, trying to somehow spin some kind of explanation for why she thinks this is all a bunch of baloney. Like, she's calling dirty barnacles on this whole thing. She said that, the internet ran with a lie, and she's saying cancel culture and all of that, but she's not really expanding on that in any meaningful way. It just feels like she had this image of Colleen because they were close, apparently, and she's refusing to hear from victims that came forward with their own experiences with Colleen that are very different from the one she experienced, so she's writing it all off as being some kind of attack, some unjust, malicious attack from bad actors.
She's cool, and I think the problem is the internet was able to capitalize off of her cancellation, and they still are continuing to, and it's not okay because a lot of it is based off of lies, and it is
a scary place when you put yourself. It was one thing, I came to television, which is
I wish she would explain what the lies are then. Because if she has evidence that debunks all of this, it'd be extremely invaluable, and I'm sure Colleen would really appreciate it, because she's not doing anything to defend herself. That ukulele apology video offered nothing. She was too focused on delivering a Billboard top-end track, a fucking Grammy award-winning toxic gossip train jingle that would distract people, I guess. Like, they'd be too focused on the heater of a song that she delivers that they'll forget all about the accusations and behavior and all of that. Like, she didn't actually defend herself at any point so far. When, if she's innocent, if all of these things truly are lies like you say they are, she should want to. There is a lot of evidence. There are videos that she sent. And unless that's deepfaked, that's a very hard thing to prove is wrong or justified in any way. So the fact that JoJo's defending her so adamantly and claiming it's all lies and it's just the internet capitalizing off her cancellation is pretty fucking wild. To try and defend the indefensible it's a Herculean task, but she's going for it. Again, if all of it is made up, then eventually, hopefully the truth comes out, I suppose, because right now it really does seem like everything Colleen has been accused of has substantial evidence behind the claims, whereas there is nothing to the contrary that proves that no, all of this isn't real and we shouldn't trust it. So, I mean, I'm of course going to keep my finger on the pulse here and wait and see if any new developments in this whole situation continues going forward. But yeah, anyway, just wanted to talk about this because I found it to be a pretty surprising segment here. That's about it. See ya. Yesterday, iDubbbz posted a YouTube video that's become extremely divisive. I haven't seen people this divided on a singular topic since the red and blue dress debate. The video he posted was basically an apology for the content he made in the past, apologizing for it being hurtful or damaging, and a whole myriad of other things that he wanted to come forward with, and talking about how he's changed as a person and thus his content will be changing. He goes over like insecurities of his past, and overall he just invites the audience into the back of the kitchen to see how the sausage is made and meet the chef. And for a lot of people, they didn't want to meet the chef. He's being very open and honest about his feelings on his older self and now his current mentality, how he feels better and healthier and doesn't like what he did in the past and didn't like who he used to be. So it's a whole apology video for all of that. He releases more feelings in this video than Pandora's box, and I kind of want to go over this whole situation because I have a lot of thoughts on the topic, not only as it pertains to iDubbbz in particular, but just in the general creator space. There's a few things that I want to talk about here.
For a while, I felt like if I changed my content over time, that people would see that as a reflection of who I am and what I value. But I'm starting to realize that that is a very weak and passive way to, run my channel and live my life.
I'm sorry to immediately come in here with the Phoenix Wright objection, but I completely disagree with the sentiment that it's weak or passive to change your content and expect people to see that as a reflection of yourself. That's pretty much the optimal way of handling any kind of situation in which you're not comfortable with either your audience or the content you've been making. By changing the content over time, you're changing the audience over time as well, obviously, right? The people that subscribed for your previous catalog of content might not stick around for the stuff you start creating when it goes in a different direction, and that's a totally fine thing. I don't think there's anything weak about just making different content and growing individually without having to come forward and share that growth with your audience. At the end of the day, your subscribers aren't your friends. You don't know them and they don't know you. That's the brass tacks of it. Sorry to blast the cold water in your face first thing in the morning. You don't owe them an explanation for why you're changing your content. You're welcome to tell them. I think that's totally within your right to do. But I really disagree that it's weak if you don't explain why you're changing your content. You can just make different stuff and go in that direction where you're happier without ever really needing to come forward and like really lecture on why.
I think I should have the balls to make an apology video and take accountability for the mistakes I've made. So that's what this video is. I am responsible for creating a lot of hurtful and damaging content on this channel. And I've also created a culture of apathy and a lot of like cruelty as well. Like, some of the videos I've made have been very not edgy. I don't think they some of these videos were edgy. I think they were just outright cruel.
It sucks to hear that this is how he thinks about his old content and his old self. It's always a very difficult realization when you look back on, the you of a few years ago disappointed. Like, I used to be 5'6", and I still am, but it sucks to realize that I was then too, and have been for a long time. Point is, he wasn't happy with the content he made or the person he was, and now he's trying to apologize for the videos he made. And I, once again, have to completely disagree with the way he looks at it. I feel like his perspective on it is very warped by the way the internet has evolved over the years. The way he talks about this content makes it sound like he used to fucking murder puppies for these videos. which it was never that extreme. I very much would consider it edgy. It was 2016 edginess in all of its glory. That was entirely the brand. And for its time, it lived peacefully. You know, all four nations, water, earth, fire, air, lived together in harmony with all this edginess going on. Now, obviously, times have changed, and he has changed. He's gotten older. He's in his 30s now. In your 30s, it's not exactly entertaining to just be spamming slurs for shock humor. I don't find that entertaining, and he doesn't either. So it's totally fine to want to distance yourself from making content like that. But I don't think it was a mistake that he made those videos. Like, they're not hurtful, nor do I really think they're damaging. Now, you could make an argument that they were hurtful to the people they were about, like the content cop on Tana or Leafy or any of that. You could say, like, you know, he hurt their feelings or sent harassment their way, which may have been a mental burden on them, and you could feel bad about that, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I don't think the goal of his content was ever to be hurtful or damaging. He was just trying to entertain and using edginess as shock humor, which for its time was acceptable online. Now, whether or not you think that's okay that it was ever acceptable, that's a different argument for a different day. But the point is, the point of his content wasn't to be hateful or hurtful. He really was just trying to entertain. At least that's how I and the majority of people viewed it. So I just don't think that the apology is really warranted. You can explain, like, I just don't like making that content anymore, so I won't. And be like, hey, I even regret making that content because it's kind of cringe now. That's all fine. But to think that it is this huge, massive problem, like you made an unforgivable mistake, is a little weird to me.
So I don't want people to, get it confused about, where I stand. I have made some cruel, hurtful content, and I need to acknowledge that, and I'm really sorry that it's taken me this long to acknowledge it. The content I'm talking about specifically are content cop videos and videos where I was just generally criticizing people for very lackluster reasons and, obviously didn't have any accountability online whatsoever on my end.
You shouldn't have to apologize for criticizing someone or something. Voicing your opinion on a subject is a totally natural thing to do. I get criticized, I criticize others, people criticize movies, games, music, all of that. And to try and vilify the idea of criticism being evil, I think is a little dangerous because then you just create these echo chambers and no one ever really grows from that. I think it's totally fine if you regret the way you criticize things, the way you approach the subjects, if you regret how you handled it, that's okay. However, I wouldn't necessarily say that you were picking apart people for lackluster things. You seem to really look back negatively on all of the content cops, but whether you like it or not, you did make good points and good arguments against people who did deserve criticism. I feel like the main pain point of those videos he used to make is the slurs in them. Like, his catchphrase was 2 slurs strung together, right? Like, that's not exactly something to be super proud of. I get that. But to go back and say, like, all of it's shit, all of it's, bad and cruel, I think is going way overboard, because it's not. I don't think any of it was cruel. I don't think the criticism was unwarranted, but it's fine to just regret the way you handled it to a certain extent without saying all the content was damaging or cruel or bad.
I was morally grandstanding and acting as if I am any better than any of these people that I was making content cop videos on, and I'm not. I'm a human. I'm a real human who makes mistakes, and, I make a different set of mistakes than the people I was making videos on, but it doesn't matter. I don't think anyone deserves that level of cruelty or hate. It's also indoctrinated a lot of people into thinking that this is an okay way to behave, and it's not.
I feel like there's a chance he may have been hit by a Men in Black neuralizer and had his memories rewritten of what that content actually was, because I never got the impression from those videos that he was morally grandstanding or that he was trying to pitch himself as superior to them morally. He never really tried to make himself seem like he was better than them. In fact, he would multiple times point out, like, his problems as well, and even give them advice on how they could have attacked him better in response, giving them ammo if they wanted to use against him. It all seemed very self-aware, not from like a moral grandstanding perspective, but just You were lending criticism in a goofy way to entertain your audience as well as provide legitimate points for why these people are doing bad things or have done bad things. For example, making a content comp on Leafy and bullying him the same way he'd bully the people in his videos, right? Like, that's not exactly the most cruel thing in the world. It's just making a point and making that point entertaining to your audience.
I am very insecure about my ability to create interesting content or like entertain. It's gotten better over the years, but it's something that I have struggled with constantly. And it's one of the reasons why I, kept making this hurtful content. You do interpret that as an excuse, but I hope that that is relatable to other creators who maybe struggle with the same thing.
Now, this subject right here is something that extends beyond the iDubbbz situation. It's the insecurity, especially with a creator who's found a lot of success with one branch of content, that fearfulness to try other things because you don't know how to be perceived and you're a little worried about your ability to even deliver something that's not the norm that your audience is used to. That's a very honest look into that mentality, and you see it all the time on the platform with people that have found success in one niche and they never leave it. And that's because there's always that fear that if you do, you'll lose your audience or you'll just not be good at it. So most people live in the exact same style of content forever. And that's how I was for like the first 8 or 9 years of this channel, doing nothing but gameplay and commentary videos, spouting the word nipple and titty and cum as much as I possibly could within the first 2 minutes and throughout the rest of the video. But eventually, you do take a risk and you try other things, and I always think that's the most fulfilling thing a creator can do, which is branch out from their niche. At least to try it, dip your toes in the deep end of that pool and give it a whirl.
I was being very bigoted in a lot of my videos, and I justified it because, I didn't think it was too serious. And I thought that people were going to see that I had good intentions, but that's so silly, Casual racism is still racism. Casual bigotry is still bigotry. And, I said a lot of things that I look back at and I cringe now, and I'm like, that is an awful thing to say.
This I completely understand. That is totally normal to look back on that and cringe, right? In your 30s and really any age over 16, you're not exactly going to be getting a hearty ho 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 belly laugh just hearing a bunch of slurs being spammed. Real life isn't Call of Duty lobbies. I don't think many people in the real world are going to be like laughing and fist pumping hearing you just shout slurs as comedy. So that makes sense to look back on that and cringe. However, none of your videos came from a place of hate. At least I don't think so. I don't think you were ever a racist or a bigot or anything like that. You used those words for shock humor. That was the whole goal, the edgy shock humor of using those words. And you made it pretty clear that that was kind of your drive. And he does mention it in this video with the it's either all okay or none of it's okay mentality. But I really think most people were able to recognize that the things he was saying weren't coming from a place of legitimate hate. Now, you can of course still say that it's unacceptable that he was using slurs for shock humor and punchlines in his videos for the jokes. That's a totally fair perspective to have. But it's still, I think, a little ridiculous to make it seem like it was this big of a deal that it warranted a whole apology video in which he makes it seem like he'll never truly find forgiveness and he'll never forgive himself for it, for saying the slurs in the videos and making the content he did. Because again, like, he's talking about it like he's a fucking reformed racist, like he was actually a racist and now he's not, when I don't think that was the case. He was an edgelord, and that's it. I feel like this whole video could have just been summed up very easily like, hey guys, it was fucking 2016. I was edgy, and now I think it's cringy, so I don't want to do that anymore, and we're closing the book. That we're shutting that chapter down, putting the kibosh on it. Now we're doing some other stuff, and that would have been a totally fine explanation. A lot of people would have still would have been disappointed, of course, in his audience that liked that content. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't feel like a prisoner to your audience. You should make what makes you happiest to create. Like, I don't think you should have felt obligated to make this video. Like, I don't think this situation was so damaging that it warranted this kind of, like, fucking presidential press conference here over it and apologizing for the content you made back then. I don't think like you ruined lives because you made content cop. I don't think you made an entire generation of racists and bigots because you use slurs for shock humor. I think that's a very bastardized perspective of how people digest content online. Now, I have no doubt that his audience did cultivate some weirdo losers that probably were real racists somewhere in there that didn't really care about his message and just liked that he was saying the N-word. I have no doubt that existed in his community. But I don't think that was his goal, and there's always going to be weirdo losers. Of course, you can do your best to mitigate those people from feeling welcome in your community, but that all starts with just changing the content over time. Again, that's not a weak thing to do. That is not a weak or passive approach. The vilifying of your own audience and your previous content, I don't think is the right way of even looking at the content you used to make or the audience that you had. Of course, there were bad actors in there, but not everyone was. And to make them feel like they were if they liked your content is a little weird. And I don't think that's the goal of this video by any means, but it does come across that way. Like, you weren't a bad person if you were laughing at his content cops or anything like that. And I don't think he was a bad person for making those content cops in the first place.
I shouldn't be able to just make an apology video and walk away from it. This is something that I should live the rest of my life with, and I expect to. I've profited off of this bigoted content for years, and I've made a successful career out of it, and that's not right. I think that this is only a step in the right direction, and I know that a lot more needs to be done to even approach a life that I would think would be like acceptable.
You don't deserve to be fucking publicly flogged with tomatoes thrown at you for the rest of your life and skinned alive because you made edgy videos in 2016, man. It's just not that big of a deal. It feels horrible hearing this from him, knowing that it weighs so heavily on his mind that he made these videos, so he feels like he's a real piece of shit for doing it. You just made edgy YouTube videos. You didn't ruin anybody's life. You didn't create a fucking army of racists and bigots. The content itself isn't bigoted content either. You used edgy shock humor. And I don't think that makes you a bigot that you're going to have to atone for those sins for the rest of your life over.
I am running ads on this video, and any revenue generated from this video I'm going to match and donate to an organization that would have been particularly affected by the type of rhetoric that I've been spewing on this channel. And again, this isn't the end of what I'm doing. This is just the start.
You'll get no complaints from me here. I'm always on the side of helping people, so anything charitable, I'm always for. Though I don't think it was necessary or anything, I still think that's a nice gesture regardless. But he uses the word rhetoric here. And that again makes it sound like these videos were coming from like a legitimate racist, which I don't think they were. I really don't. At least I don't want to believe that iDubbbz used to be a racist and he was using that to try and, propel his beliefs forward. He really it seems like he was really just using these words as shock humor, which is cringy, sure, very cringy, and that is absolutely fine to point out. But it doesn't strike me as something that was genuinely ruining people's lives hearing that kind of shit. It's just kind of like an eye-rolling thing to look back on now, like, ugh, that's fucking lame. And that's really it. I just don't think it goes too much deeper than that. Like I said, I have no doubt there really were some dangerous weirdos that did hold dangerous beliefs in his community. But I don't think he made them. I think they were there when they found his content to begin with, and they stuck around because they just liked hearing the edgy words spoken out loud. That's it. I don't think he made them. He wasn't the Frankenstein to their monster. Now, I don't want to just keep dissecting every single piece of the video here. I want to kind of branch this out into a broader talking point about when a creator starts to resent the audience and community they've fostered. Because that's fundamentally what's happened here. iDubbbz has grown up now. He doesn't like what he made when he was younger, and he doesn't like the audience that he made along the way, along the journey. He mentions a couple of times in the videos, like, some of these eureka moments where he's like, man, this is really fucking frustrating the people that are in my audience. Well, he doesn't blatantly say that, but he tells a couple anecdotes about, going to conventions and meeting fans and it being kind of like this mirror held up to him that he didn't like the reflection of. And that's a very interesting and unfortunately pretty common thing to have happen online, where someone spends a long time building their brand and building their audience. And as they grow, they start to really resent the audience that they have. And usually this comes in one of two forms, where you have someone like Darkside Phil. I've used him as an example before, but he has an audience that he doesn't seem to really like, but he needs them because they pay his bills. So he has to constantly keep doing the same things in order to keep the lights on. And I imagine he feels trapped by his viewers because he has to keep doing this song and dance in order to get the money from them, but doesn't like what he's doing. And it also happens to other creators as well who spend a long time building their identity online, but they don't like what they're doing and they don't like the people that are watching them. So then they try and make some kind of change and then get eaten alive by their community, which only further reinforces their disdain for them, which leads to a really toxic community where everyone's at each other's throats. There's countless examples of that. Point is, that experience online is all too common. And when it does happen, a creator's left with a choice. They either just suck it up and keep making the shit that they clap for, even though it doesn't make them happy and they don't like the audience that's clapping for them, or they try and change the content and grow a different kind of audience, which is always the scarier option. That's always the more uncertain one, because maybe no one likes it and now you've lost that audience you've built up and now your career is in jeopardy. You might not be able to keep the lights on by doing this career anymore because now you've alienated them, gone in a different direction, and it hasn't worked out. So the majority of creators in this position just kind of suck it up, rub some dirt in it, and just keep doing the same shit over and over, even if it makes them miserable. And that's why you'll see a lot of creators burn out. So I'll always respect the creators that choose the harder path here of pivoting and changing their content, doing what makes them happier, even if it means taking that huge risk of losing the audience you've built up over time. Even though I disagree with iDubbbz's perspective on his older content being damaging or dangerous or indoctrinating, I still do respect that he didn't like what he was doing, so now he's doing something that he likes more. Even though it is coming at the risk of losing his audience, he'll find happiness in the content that he makes going forward, and maybe he's happier with the new audience that he potentially cultivates through all of it. So, but anyway, just kind of wanted to talk about this whole situation. That's about it. Yeah, I know, I'm the millionth person talking about this situation, but how can I help myself? I'm an addict, and my drug of choice is silliness. Goofy stories are the spaghetti and I'm the meatball. I can't resist. So, many of you have probably already seen, the biggest YouTube live streamer, IShowSpeed, just had a bit of a whoops-a-daisy moment on stream. He was playing Five Nights at Freddy's and Chica jump-scared him, and his penis fell out of his shorts. Now you might be asking yourself, how is this possible? What kind of paranormal activity took place here? Did Chica crawl out of the screen and pull his dick out for him on camera? Like, how did this go wrong? What a weird response to fear, to expose yourself after you get frightened. I know Five Nights at Freddy's fandom can get a little wild, but I mean, this is next level. So what exactly happened? Well, IShowSpeed was playing a Five Nights at Freddy's game, and Chica gave him a spook, said boo, and in response to the jump scare, Speed stood up, saying that he wanted to fuck Chica and he was thrusting at the camera. One thing led to another and then bang, penis. So, as you can imagine, this was a pretty embarrassing moment that, of course, blew up online. More like I show meat, am I right? This situation could lead to an extended vacation from YouTube streaming because nudity is against their rules, but there's a chance that they don't enforce it super strict here since it was an accident. They have been somewhat loosey-goosey on these rules in the past. Like, even just a month ago, there was a channel that blew up thanks to a viral video they made of a guy naring his butthole. Just full asshole on display, no censorship, nothing like that. It's just his brown balloon knot getting nared. And it was totally fine, still on the platform. And that's thanks to their educational content override policy where you can have things like a chocolate starfish getting de-haired without censorship, and it's okay because there's educational context around it. Though in this case, with the IShowSpeed cock situation, I don't exactly know what argument you'd make for it being educational, unless it's like this is educational because it demonstrates how not to react to a jump scare, I guess. I don't know. But since it's accidental, they might have some flexibility on not like banning him for it outright. We're gonna have to wait and see what happens with it, but I don't think this is going to end up with like the termination of his account or anything. But he may get some kind of community guideline strike, which would prevent him from streaming for a certain period of time. And to think this whole situation could have been avoided if he just wore underwear. This isn't a segue into an ad or anything like that. I was just thinking to myself, when was the last time I wore pants without underwear? And it's been so long. I'm 29 years old now, so I've started to get those old man nuts that hang real low and just bounce around chaotically. So if they're not supported by underpants, those bastards will just be swinging around like they're playing a game of tetherball with each other. My testicles will just be going hog wild down there, and it doesn't feel great. So I couldn't even imagine myself like jumping around and being active without undergarments on. I would injure myself very quickly. Now, of course, when it comes to on-stream wiener moments, the great dark side Phil always comes up, because DSP has one of the most iconic stream clips of all time where he didn't realize he was live and then started masturbating. But you couldn't see any shaft or anything. The schlong was still left to the imagination. He did finish. He tilts his head back in ecstasy as he finishes, but you never saw anything. In this case, he actually does just have his entire cock out on screen for a moment. He flashed the entire screen. So it's definitely more extreme than the Dark Side Phil event. And the whole thing has obviously led to a lot of discussion around like what's going to happen next, because clearly this is a violation of rules, but it also appears like it was an accident. So how harsh is the punishment going to be? And I guess we're just going to have to wait and see there. It does seem accidental. I think he wanted to have like an over-the-top overreaction to jump scares that a lot of streamers and YouTubers do, and he just went too far with it, leading to just this disastrous wardrobe malfunction moment. Now, a lot of people have also started saying that, maybe this was a calculated plan and he's about to announce his signing with Kick now that he can't stream on YouTube, assuming he does get a strike for this. And I have to say, that's a pretty interesting theory, because I don't think this was a premeditated scheme. He didn't pull his cock out and start dangling it in front of the webcam like he was giving a puppet show or anything like that. It does seem like it was unintentional, the result of overreacting to a jump scare. I don't see this as like a, maybe a grand departure from YouTube streaming where he's like, you know what? It's time I ride off into the sunset. I'm kind of tired of streaming. I'm going to retire the jersey number here. We're done. But I want to go out with a triumphant bang, an exit no one will see coming. Like, I don't think he came in here to try and subvert viewers' expectations like it was Game of Thrones Season 8 here with a fucking penis jump scare. Like, I don't think this was a plan. If it was, this could lead to, like, huge trouble for him, actually, I would imagine. He knows his audience skews on the much younger side of things. A lot of the IShowSpeed audience is young, and a lot of those kids were probably watching this stream, especially considering it's Five Nights at Freddy's, which is predominantly a kid's property that they really resonate with. So I don't think the idea would have crossed his mind like good content would be exposing myself in front of all of these viewers, many of which are minors. Like, I highly doubt that was a thought that crossed his mind. Now, of course, the fact that it still happened is awful, but I just really don't think it was a plan. Of course, the overreaction to the jump scare is a plan. Like, that was definitely something he decided he was going to do with, like, going crazy about the jump scare. But everything that happened after that, I don't think was some kind of calculated plot. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. That's really about it. So yeah. Hey, this is actually the most outrageous setup I've ever attempted. I've got the normal Sony camera balancing on a small beam in the hotel room here that's looking like a high wire out of a circus, and I have it propped up a little bit with the laptop flipped down and slightly angled at an obtuse angle in order to prop it up just a little bit so you can maybe see my face. I don't know what it looks like. You might be looking at just like my bottom chin, So I'm going to look like the secretary from the Powerpuff Girls, but we're going to run it anyway. So as you can see, I'm still on my little expedition away from home. I'm in my hotel room. Don't be alarmed. I know I'm not wearing a white shirt, but this isn't a cry for help or anything. It's very cold. So I threw on one of the only long sleeve shirts that I had available. So that's the whole explanation there. Anyway, the reason I have urgently scrambled here to get to this computer in order to talk about something is because a huge story has been developing over the last, I don't know, like 2 hours or something, where SSSniperWolf has now doxed Jack's films. I'm sure this is something that a lot of you are moderately familiar with, but I'll just go ahead and give you the really brief nutshell rundown of what's going on. I didn't make that cut right there on purpose. This has nothing to do with the whole video, but I need to mention this. The camera just fell on its own and stopped the recording, so we may have an angry poltergeist incident in here. I'm gonna have to get the fucking Luigi's Mansion vacuum out and just start going to town in here to clear the area, exorcise whatever spirits happen to be haunting this room. But I'm gonna finish the video regardless, but if you see my eyes roll into the back of my skull and I start levitating off the chair during it, just know, it's a haunting in Pittsburgh here. Or perhaps the cringe was too unbearable here with the subject we're covering. But anyway, back on topic. SSSniperWolf, huge channel. She mainly does TikTok reacts, which has made her the punching bag of the internet recently. She's caught more fire than the sequel to the Hunger Games because a lot of people have been stating that what she does isn't really reacting to content, it's mainly just stealing it, freebooting it. And the entire internet has come together like this giant singularity and all collapsed onto SSSniperWolf as well as some other React channels as well for this type of content. And by far the biggest soldier on the front line of this battle is Jack's Films. Jack's Films made a whole video going over why what she does isn't acceptable and even made an entire channel dedicated to making fun of her and her content. And he even has an entire bingo game that takes the piss out of her content more than a catheter takes the piss out of a hospital patient. He has pretty much daily uploads of just making fun of each of her daily reacts. This ongoing feud has been escalating and continuing for quite some time. We're in like season 5 of this anime arc here, and it's only popping off more and more. And this whole situation has led to a can of worms opening. Pandora's box has been unleashed. So it's been a massive conversation across the entire internet with tons of content creators weighing in on it, such as Dark Viper having an entire series on React content. Mudahar's made quite a few pieces on it as well, just tons of channels that have all been talking about it recently. And it's led to this witch's cauldron, this stew that's been brewing and bubbling, and now the cup runneth over and all of this have spilt from the internet to the real world. Allegedly, SSSniperWolf has just doxed Jack's Films. In an Instagram post, she posted this. And it was more than just this picture here. Apparently, she even posted one of his house, which obviously I'm not going to show you. I'm not here to just like hop on and give you like a 4K display of Jack's Films dojo here because SSSniperWolf posted it on her story. It's just an extremely degenerate, fucked up response to this whole situation from SSSniperWolf here. It's borderline illegal, I think. I don't think you can just dox somebody like this. And if it's not illegal, it's against YouTube's rules at the very least. And it violates the Geneva Convention of Internet Content Creators where you never take internet beef into the real world. It's just going too far with this whole thing. Jack's Films was just making critiques on her content as well as making fun of it, which is something everyone does all the time, every single fucking day. And to go to this extreme where you dox him for it is just an incomprehensible, insano-style step. Now, Jack's Films posting about this on Twitter obviously gained a lot of traction. This isn't exactly some kind of like whoops-a-daisy moment, you know, a mistake that could happen to anyone. This is some pretty malicious shit. There's not really a defense of it. You can't just make the claim like, well, I just wanted to kind of talk it out face to face. Like, no. That's not how this works. You don't go up to someone's house like you're about to try and sell them solar panels in order to hash out your internet beef unannounced, especially not in the middle of the night too. That's threatening. Like that is not a normal, sane way of handling things. So when this started gaining traction, SSSniperWolf herself caught onto it and deleted the post and then said this. She said, accusing me of doxing is defamation. I have no idea how to dox. He literally posted his address on Google and said I threatened him and doxed him. Jax Films said, "You posted a video tonight of you outside our home to your 5+ million followers to see while my wife and I were inside. I can't make it any simpler than that. If that's not doxing, why did you delete it?" That's kind of a checkmate moment right there. He got her with the scholar's mate. Like, you showed up to his house unannounced in the middle of the night, and then when people started to point out how that's not acceptable behavior and is very much in line with doxing, you deleted it. So you can recognize that it's bad. I don't really know how you'd Phoenix write an argument together that it's not doxing. Like, I don't even understand the statement she makes about saying that Jax Films posted his address on Google. She's talking about Google like it's the gamefaqs.com board. Like, I don't think he made a sponsored paid post with just his address as the first thing that comes up when you type in Jax Films. You definitely would have to go out of your way to find that information. I don't think he, like, geotagged his spot, made it like a Pokemon Go stop, like, really was advertising where he lives. Like, this is not common information. You went out of your way to find it and then went to his address. Like, I just really can't think of any justification for it. I've seen a couple of people huffing massive amounts of copium, nearly toxic levels of copium, saying, like, she went there to handle things like an adult, unlike Jax Films, who just speaks behind a computer. And that's just straight up delusional, if you ask me. No normal people are going to hash out their internet beef in the middle of the night, in person, unannounced, right? Like, going up to his house like she's about to, sell solar panels to him or something and ambush him with this conversation about this feud they have is not normal or acceptable. It's just like a malicious, weird thing to do. And wow, that man, a ghost just haunted my vocal folds on that one with that voice crack. Goodness gracious. Overall, I'm just shocked that SSSniperWolf, with as long as she's been on the internet and as large as she is, would think for even just a second that she'd somehow be able to get out of this situation without huge backlash and problems from it. Again, this is something that extends beyond just like normal internet etiquette. This is like downright against rules to do something like this. So I definitely think Jax Films is in the right here. He's very upset about it, probably a little concerned because, who knows who else might go to his house next since she posted it on a massive Instagram account. Like, that is a legitimate fear. She also posted this, again in response to the whole situation, saying, "This creep has been harassing me for months," then plays victim, saying, "I threatened him when I just wanted to talk to him. I have no ill intentions. It's so sad when people have to constantly create drama to pay their bills." But this doesn't make any sense. Like, this is a crazy straw of a statement. It's taken all kinds of weird twists and turns that aren't computing in my little noodle up here. If you just wanted to talk to him, why wouldn't you just reach out to him through normal channels online? I'm sure he would have responded to you instantly. He seems to respond to everyone about everything in regards to the entire React situation. So I feel like if you had reached out to him, he would have been thrilled to talk to you about it. But again, I'm not his fucking PR guy. I don't know. Maybe you did reach out to him and he didn't see it or he ignored it. I have no idea. But regardless, you going to his house to try to talk to him that's some psychopath shit. That's not a normal thing that anyone should be doing. There's other channels that you could have tried beforehand. Go to one of his bingo nights on Twitch and be like, "Hey, listen, Buster, I'm ready to hash it out. Let's talk." And again, I'm sure he probably would have seen that. And that would be a lot less scary than having you show up in the middle of the fucking night to his home unannounced. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I think the goal here was to either scare him or put his information out there to maybe some less than savory individuals that could also scare him. I don't know, but regardless, the way you handled this is atrocious and dangerous. Like, downright, dangerous thing to do. So I totally understand the response from Jax Films about this and being frightened by it, because this is fucked up. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this because I think this is one of the rare cases of a huge YouTuber making a massive blunder like this, where you would step on actual rules and potentially laws all over some internet beef. So yeah, I just had to talk about this one a little bit. That's it. See ya. Cody Ko is a YouTuber that probably doesn't need an introduction. I don't need to read the Wikipedia article explaining to you who he is and lore dumping. I'm sure most of you are at least loosely familiar with his content. He's been very large on the platform for years now. And recently, some disturbing allegations have come out against him. Now, the allegations against him aren't exactly brand new. They're not, fresh off the battle bus, hot drop in here out of nowhere. They've actually existed for a little while now, but never actually received a lot of coverage or a lot of attention. Kind of just been sidelined with people not knowing about it or not talking about it until yesterday when another YouTuber named D'Angelo Wallace gave some amazing coverage breaking down the entire situation here and going over everything that Cody Ko is accused of.
Someone has been alleging for years now that you, one of the largest commentary creators on YouTube, knowingly committed a crime against her when she was a minor. But YouTubers and viewers alike are ignoring and discrediting these allegations solely because the person making them happens to be an unlikable woman online, Tana Mojo.
Yikes. Yeah, that's some pretty awful shit right there. That's a huge allegation that actually has a lot of evidence backing it up, which D'Angelo Wallace covers in great detail in this video. It's not some imaginary nothing burger that someone squeaked out between their butt cheeks to try and ruin Cody Ko. It's a serious accusation that appears to have a lot of evidence about it.
I'm not here to accuse you of committing a crime in this video because I can't do that based on someone else's allegations. Nobody can definitively take these allegations as proof, but at the same time, they should still be looked at and not treated as an open secret and swept under the rug like you've been doing for so many years now.
I think that's a great point. Even though these are still allegations with nothing that's been proven, since there is so much supporting evidence around the claims, it definitely is something that needs to be examined thoroughly because it is a huge deal.
And speaking of this podcast, about a month ago, she hosted a live episode in front of an audience, and the conversation turned to you.
Who's the smallest you've ever had sex with?
Oh my God, no one look at me, Cody Ko. I can say that. I was literally 17. I can say that.
This clip started making the rounds, and people were understandably perturbed, because if Tana Mojo was 17, you would have been 25. So people started speculating, and Tana decided to set the record straight.
I hooked up with Cody Ko when I was 17 and he was 25.
I'm going to go ahead and break down these numbers here because it seems like people are starting to struggle with math, like teriology starting to pop off with 1 × 1 = 2 and all of that. I'm just going to go ahead and explain this. 17 is less than 18. Thus, that is below the age of consent and is a crime. And I already have seen comments on this situation about 17, who gives a fuck? That's basically 18 anyway. And it's this same dog shit, brain dead, concerning mentality, like your hard drive needs to be investigated type shit that we saw with Dr. Disrespect, where they're like, no one should really care that Dr. Disrespect was talking inappropriately with a 17-year-old. Even though, once again, you absolute fucking Cro-Magnon, there is no evidence that Dr. Disrespect ever talked to a 17-year-old. Not even he said that. It has only ever been stated as a minor. Everyone around Dr. Disrespect never mentioned 17. It's actual delusional Fantasyland Narnia type shit where people are trying to defend him by saying it was actually a 17-year-old, 364 days old. Which is absolute fucking barnacles. Like, that's a load of fish paste. And even still, it's bad. I don't know how we've devolved so much where all of a sudden 17 is now something people try and justify. So like in this case right here, you'll have some drooling, stinky, bumbling morons in the comments saying how it's not a big deal because 17 shouldn't be an issue. You know, like, age of consent over in this region is actually 16, so really, he waited till she was old. Like, it's craziness. It's actually craziness. It is a crime. It is a minor. Still, it's bad. Like, I don't know why that needs to be explained all of a sudden. Now, something D'Angelo Wallace does make a point of here is pointing out that Tana Mojo is not well liked. I'm sure if you've been on YouTube for any length of time, you've heard her name and seen a lot of less than stellar things about her. She has a history of lying and putting on a lot of bad stuff and bad behavior. However, when it comes to this claim, this doesn't appear to be something that she's just lying about for clout to try and elevate her platform on the back of Cody Ko's good name or anything like that. This is a story that's been told even a few years in the past about this situation here. So this isn't something that she just pulled out of thin air. This is actually an allegation that has existed for a long time that is only just now starting to surface.
She claims that not only were you fully aware of her age at the time, but someone even tried to stop you and you went ahead anyway.
There was a situation with Gabby Hanna at a playlist live where she pulled him aside and told him like, yo, she's 17. And then we still went and hooked up.
To be clear, 17 is under the age of consent in many states, including Florida, where playlist live used to take place. So this means that Tana Mojo is accusing you of statutory rape, and she's not trying to hide that.
This isn't just some crazy tea. It was a crime.
Remember how Tana said that fellow YouTuber Gabby Hanna tried to stop you before everything allegedly went down? Well, did you know that Gabby is actually on record telling the exact same story several years ago?
One time, I told a guy, I saw him making out with a girl at a party who was underage, and I pulled him aside and I was like, hey man, you probably don't know, I know she like looks a little older, she's underage, watch it. And he's like, oh my God, thank you for telling me. And then he turned that.
This is really, really bad.
Really, really bad indeed. Pardon my potty mouth here, but this is fucking disgusting. Like, this is by far the most compelling piece of evidence presented, because this is a completely separate third-party individual coming forward now with the same story years ago, exactly how Tana described it. Finding this clip was huge. I don't even know how it was unearthed. Huge props for finding this ancient artifact, because apparently it had been scrubbed from like everywhere. I don't even know how you would have even gone about finding something like this, but I really think it is an important piece to this story. It's a very strong piece of evidence, and it should hopefully showcase that this isn't just something Tana is making up on the spot for attention or anything like that. This is something that has been talked about for years. There's a lot of comments that get shown in the video with people shitting on Tana for bringing this up, like, oh, this is prehistoric. Why would you ever bring this up now? You just want attention, you absolute harpy. Oh, who cares? This is bullshit. It's all a lie anyway. All you do is lie. Liar, liar, plants for hire. You harlot. Those kind of comments, like unhinged people about this. And I really think that this Gabby Hanna clip that's been provided should shut that garbage down. Of course, it doesn't prove 100%, the authenticity of everything. As D'Angelo Wallace also explains, these are still allegations. But that is a pretty substantial piece of evidence there that should at least show why this needs to be talked about and should absolutely be addressed directly by Cody.
People make accusations all the time, specifically regarding things that are very difficult to prove or disprove, unfortunate as that may be. But when somebody makes an allegation and they say they have a witness, and that witness can be found telling the exact same story years before any of this came out, that's not something I can just ignore. In a situation that cannot be proven, corroboration by a third party goes a long way. I'm not accusing you of committing a crime, but even if what Tana says is false, your silence is still grossly incompetent at best.
It really is a pretty bad strategy here. This isn't something John Madden would draw up in the playbook. Burying his head in the sand and hoping that the storm blows through doesn't exactly work in a situation like this. I mean, I guess it has up till this point, since so few people were aware of it, but now that it's being talked about more and more, I do think that he's going to need to come forward about all of it. There is quite a bit of time in the video dedicated to the community's response to the allegations, because it is bad how, viewers have responded to all of this. Basically, and it is a good point that D'Angelo Wallace made, because Tana Mojo is widely disliked by the broader YouTube audience, when she was the one putting these claims out there, people attacked her, dogpiled her for saying things like this. They jumped on her like she had just, killed a puppy in front of them. People responded to her in the worst possible way with these allegations. And Tana made a really good point where she said if this was any other YouTuber she was talking about, one that wasn't as highly regarded as Cody, the response would be completely different, where she'd be getting sympathetic messages and support for coming forward with her experience. But because it's Cody, it's been a biblical smackdown in the comments against her, which is just a crazy response to something like this. I mean, there were some lunatics there, like genuinely hateful people saying the most misogynistic shit you could find in the comment section about this, because she dared come forward with her experience and talk about that situation. Now again, yes, they are allegations. Nothing has been proven. But there is a lot of evidence here that should at the very least get a response from Cody Co about all of this. And it's not like he's not aware of what's happening. As pointed out in this video, he is seemingly censoring his YouTube comment section.
And now you're choosing censorship. On your YouTube channel, where you've been pumping out content nearly every day now, I couldn't find a single comment on your last video about this situation. Not even one. Comparing that to the comment section on your Instagram, where every single comment I saw was about this, it's clear that you're heavily censoring your audience on YouTube.
I actually went and checked this myself because this is a Lego build that you can follow along with at home. I went to his latest upload and clicked newest in the comment section because surely you'd see some now after this is being blown up into a huge story. But even when filtering on his newest upload by newest comments, I still only found a couple of comments that referenced this. So it really does seem like it's being heavily censored in the YouTube comments. Because with how big the story is, you would expect a lot of them, especially when you look at his Instagram. But somehow, nothing on YouTube? Yeah, that's very suspicious. That definitely smells like he is censoring the comments there. So it's not like he doesn't know what's going on here. Tana also said that he had reached out at some point kind of about this, saying like, are we good? So it's not something that he's just unaware of, and that's why he hasn't addressed it. D'Angelo Wallace also points out how he's responded to things in the past, like he paywalled an apology for like an old clip that surfaced where he was using a slur. So he's talking about like the history of responding poorly to situations that Cody finds himself in. And then he brought up this, which I'd never heard of.
Not many people know that you've already lost fans over an eerily similar topic. You used to frequently feature and promote your college friend Colby Leachman in your videos, until it came out that during your school days, Leachman's university put him on probation for, as a United States District Judge would later put it, the non-consensual videotaping of a sex act with another student, showing the video to other people, lying to the police about the video, and behaving horribly to that individual and at least one other woman. To make matters worse, the woman in the video also alleged that Leachman drugged her before the recording and that she hadn't actually consented to anything at all. You had this man in your videos. You were telling us to follow him on Instagram, and at some point you did wise up, so he's no longer part of your content, but he still seems like he's very much a part of your friend group. From the continued hangout since then to inviting him to your wedding just last year, people are under the impression that you're best friends with someone who, at best, committed an illegal sex act and at worst is an alleged rapist. And no matter how many times people rediscover this information over the years, you refuse to say anything at all.
That is baffling to me. Like, it's one thing to be friends with someone who turns out to be a monster, but once you learn that they're a monster, that's where it should stop. I've said this before. If my best friend Matt turned out to have like a secret double life, you know, a Jekyll and Hyde situation where Matt goes out there and he does something truly heinous, I would cut them out of my life. I wouldn't be able to go forward being friends with someone like that. You know, giving him a fist bump saying, hey, we're still bubble buddies, bro. Like, I couldn't do that. So it's so weird to me that Cody can, and when people have talked about it in the past, apparently Cody has just ignored it. That is very, very odd.
I haven't seen a single channel over 1 million subscribers do so much as acknowledge that this situation exists. And I'm not talking about channels that never would have discussed something like this either. I mean the same channels that were rightfully calling out people like Dr. Disrespect for texting a minor, which are the same channels that are now completely ignoring a scenario with an even bigger creator being accused of doing something much worse.
D'Angelo Wallace makes a point a couple times in this video about the silence on this subject being staggering, considering in the YouTube ecosystem there's tons of commentary channels that'll cover a wide variety of topics, sometimes rumors that aren't nearly this serious, you know, like a 2-part docuseries on that time Markiplier allegedly pooped without peeing. Or, in my case, I'll make a whole rant going over how aliens probably aren't visiting us via theoretical warp drives to haunt our boners. And yet, somehow, a story that's this serious just slips through the cracks and didn't have many people talking about it until very recently. So I'd like to at least take a quick moment here to explain why I hadn't covered it. Now, I did hear the whispers about this Cody Co allegation about a week ago now, where someone in stream chat had mentioned, hey, have you heard what Cody Co apparently did with Tana Mojo? And on stream, I asked what they were talking about because I hadn't heard shit about that. Eventually, another chatter explained that I could find more information about it on Reddit because a conversation was starting to develop around those allegations. So I made like a note of it and then went to bed. The following day, I got home pretty late and then went to follow up on things from the previous night. Because sometimes during stream, I'll make like tabs about what people are telling me to look up. I don't do react content on stream or anything anymore, so if it's like a video that people are recommending I check out to get caught up on something or whatever, I'll make a tab for that video and then watch it when I get back to the following day. And when it came to the Cody Co thing with the Reddit post, by the time I got to it, it was deleted. So I kind of assumed that maybe the claims were just baloney, and I didn't see a whole lot of chatter about it. I saw a couple of tweets that loosely talked around it, vaguely, and I just didn't look into it deeper than that. And I recognize now that that was a mistake, so I'm sorry for that. But I just didn't find a lot of information at the time, until, of course, last night when D'Angelo Wallace posted the video covering all of this. So I know the speculation has been made that the reason people aren't talking about the Cody Co situation is because he's a channel that a lot of people respect and is friends with a lot of the community. So no one wants to speak out against their friend or a channel that they respect so much, thus they're trying to help, bury it or not let it, erupt into the mainstream. For me, that wasn't the case. When I went looking for the info after that stream, I didn't find anything, and I didn't do a big enough dive on it to access it, so I just kind of stopped looking, which, again, was a mistake, clearly. I've talked about Cody Co's content in the past. I've liked his content. I respected him as a content creator, but I'd never say that we were friends or anything. I went on his podcast one time, and I think we only ever talked in Twitter DMs once as well. We weren't exactly like inseparable friends, the best of pals and buddies or anything. Like, I imagine if we walked by each other in a crowded mall, we'd do one of these to each other, and that'd probably be the end of it. This isn't some kind of story that I was avoiding or anything like that. I just truly didn't do enough digging on it because, as D'Angelo Wallace does mention, this story has been pretty successfully buried for the most part, where a lot of people just weren't aware of it, and I didn't do due diligence to become aware of it. But luckily, D'Angelo Wallace did, and created this great video going over all of it. So I wanted to talk about this because obviously it's a very serious situation. Cody Co absolutely should come forward to explain all of it, and if there is another side to this story, tell it. If it's wrong, set the record straight. It's a very upsetting story here that at the very least needs to be addressed by Cody publicly. This can't be another paywalled apology situation or anything like that. This should definitely be something that he comes forward and actually talks about. So yeah, that's really about it. So yeah.